Hi there guys, in this video I'll actually be doing a review on X4. Now I was planning to do this a few days ago, however I haven't felt all particularly that well and other things have come into plan, so basically meant the video got a bit delayed. But anyway, so if you haven't heard of the X series before, these are a set of games that are based in space and they are based on 4 key elements, which is trade, build, fight and think. So X4 is the latest in the franchise. Just previous to that we had X Rebirth. To me this was a bit of a failure as they tried to change too much of the game. So what Egosoft have actually done this time is to try and continue on the X3 franchise. So X4 is actually based on the same engine as Rebirth. This time it does use a different API called Vulkan. But the gameplay wise there has been quite a lot of changes, so you can now change ships without a problem. You can change all the equipment on your ships and you can build large complexes and design them how you like. Graphical wise I wouldn't say there's anything here that's going to particularly wow you. It's okay, but it's not that brilliant. The API doesn't really have that much effect on the graphics side of things. I suppose another graphical change is the stations are somewhat smaller than they were in Rebirth. In Rebirth you could get a single station taking the whole area up or zone. Now with their reduced size you can get more into the area, so it's not feeling so squashed as it used to be. Performance wise this game is quite varied. Sometimes it can slow down for no apparent reason, other times it can be running at 60 FPS. I do find the walking about sections generally are a little bit slower, but performance wise it's okay. So this brings me on to my next point, which is the universe. Now the map is somewhat larger than Rebirth one, but it's not as big as a typical X3 game. I suppose that a lot of those X3 maps were expanded over many games, but still it's a little bit disappointing when the map isn't as huge as it usually is in an X3 style game. Highways are still present, but they have been backed off a lot. Yeah, they usually only provide you with a quick route to another area instead of like kind of bounding you in a certain areas as they kind of did in Rebirth. But mostly you'll be getting around the map using something called fast travel. So fast travel accelerates your ship at a higher speed, but doesn't mean you can turn very quickly. I feel this works fairly well instead of CETA, as CETA was a little bit of a cheapskate way of doing things by speeding up time, and this led to quite a few issues with things not working particularly that well, especially with AI. So all in all that's okay. However, this game does have a boost mechanic. Now most of the time it doesn't make any sense to use it, because what it does is that it uses your shields up and it can use them up very quickly. If you want to travel across the map, it's much better to use the fast travel method or the travel mode. And in combat it does present some other issues too. I've had times where I've wanted to attack a little fighter and I've seen it flying across areas because it's used its boost. I do feel something needs to be done with the boost mechanic. You could reduce its top speed and the shield usage down and make it only for a certain amount of time. You could also do it something like Elite and Dangerous, where you use it to just push your ship faster for a very short time and then you have to wait for it to recharge. But all in all I do feel it's kind of something that's been left over and not really sure what they're going to do with it, as we got the travel mode that's much more better now. So next on to combat. Now this has been greatly improved, the ability to change ships and equipment, but it still has a lot of problems. Small ships when they boost are extremely difficult to hit. And another problem that is from the Rebirth engine is that when you get into the vicinity of a big ship, they kind of drag you with them. Now what this allows you to do is to sit in a blind spot of the ship and just keep slowly hammering away at the ship until eventually it's destroyed. So it does make it very easy to take down some of these big destroyer ships. As you can see here, I just slowly hammer away on the ship and eventually it will go. There is also this kind of a bit of an old thing as well, is that the person who does the last hit on the ship actually gets the reward. So you can be here hammering away on the ship for half an hour and then to find an AI ship's just done the last hit and you don't get any credit for it. I mean, I think that's quite an outdated thing and it's something you should get credit for hitting it. As long as you've done enough damage to it, you should get some sort of reward for doing it. So I don't know how they can even rectify this, because this was an inherent problem in Rebirth, and it's basically because them ships can drag you with them. But essentially that's a gameplay mechanic, and it's also something that when you get a ship to land on, I can see it makes sense there. But for this side of things in combat, it shouldn't work at all, and it makes it far too easy to take down some of the biggest ships in the game just by sitting there and slowly hammering away. So this brings me on to my next point, which is the AI, and where things start to go a bit wrong. Most of the time the AI will behave itself and will fly around things, but on occasions it will just fly directly through things, including stations. I've had this happen with small and large ships, and unfortunately I don't have any video footage of the small ships. Usually it's the small ships free themselves, but I've had a time where it got so badly stuck it took me 5 minutes to free in the ship. I did think at that point I might even have to just load the game in and forget my progress. I've also had this happen in combat. I was in the process of fighting a Xenon, I believe, and in the process of swinging around, I think I managed to get my ship inside his ship. It's kind of must be an issue they know about, because when this happens you don't seem to suffer from any damage. So rather than resolve the issue, what they've done here is make it so it doesn't actually damage the ship. Anyway, station interiors are still here, but they tend to have a better purpose than they did before. They are recycled a lot. I must applaud Egosoft for the ability to transverse between the different environments so easily. 1 minute you can be walking around your ship, climb into the chair, and then fly around to another system, all without any loading and all done seamlessly. I did try and push this theory as far as I could. What I've tried to do here is actually use my space chute and actually try and land on the station actual platforms. It wouldn't actually let me do it, which is something I guess they just didn't quite think about. But I would be highly impressed if this actually did work. So station interiors can have problems too. In this example here, this is supposed to be a busy shipyard. However, spending a good 5-10 minutes looking around all the various sections, I couldn't find another NPC in the whole of the area. I did look through, like I said, all the sections and all that lot, and it's not something you kind of expect for a place like a shipyard. You expect a few people milling about at least. But when this happens, it feels completely devoid of any life. Now, hopefully this was just a random issue, but like I said, it does happen sometimes. I do find some platforms people just sort of walk off, and when they do, they don't seem to come back. I think it wasn't seen to be the case when it was early on the game. It did seem to be a lot more populated. Later on, like I said, there can be areas just completely empty, and like I said, it's just devoid of any life, and it seems a bit kind of deflating in some ways. But anyway, so probably the thing that Egosoft concentrated most on was the universe map. Now on here you can pretty much do everything you want without actually having to doing it in first person. In some respects this kind of makes it more fun in an RTS kind of style game. Like I said, you can order all your fleet about, give them commands, set all the traders up, tell them to fight, explore, and set waypoints up, which works pretty well. You can also order them to do multiple things, so you can order them to go and explore certain areas and then give them a waypoints, and then once they've done that, move to another area, explore that, and then go and sort of pick something up and sell it somewhere else. All that works pretty well, and I like the way you can queue up these orders. Definitely something that is much more sophisticated on, and the maps do have quite a lot of detail on. You can zoom right down to a very low level, so you can look at sort of specific drones on a map to looking at the whole area. It's quite powerful way you can do that. It's definitely something you can tell Egosoft spent quite a lot of time redeveloping. So this brings me on to the worst point of X4, which is the user interface. Now to me, a good user interface is very important. It can make a game much more easier to understand and much more easier to get into. However, X4's interface needs a major overhaul, as I feel. It can be very confusing knowing where the buttons are and what clicks on here, and nothing seems to be organised particularly well in the UI either. You've got examples like you've got drop down lists and they just are all stacked together, and sometimes you can open up more details on something and there's more, and then you click that, but it all looks like one big giant list. Nothing's really organised that well, and like I said, I prefer in some respects, if you're going to have these kind of menus, even X3's kind of tab bar thing work better in this. I don't really want to see that back necessarily in a new game. I just want to see a better user face. Another example is in the kind of middle of the screen. You can't see it in this example, but there is a sort of a hole and shield damage, and all those are kind of little bendy lines. It's not very exponential what those are. Yeah, obviously after time you work it out, but it could be so much more better explained. Obviously the two panels here are very easy to understand. It's just a shame that kind of idea wasn't carried across to the rest of the menus. I do feel that this does need a major overhaul, and it's something it should be up there being done pretty soon. Whether Egosoft will do it is a complete another matter. Like I said, the user interface just basically my thing. Yeah, I've got used to it over time, but it's kind of the thing I shouldn't have had to get used to an interface that's kind of so cock-handed. It should have been a user interface that was easily to understand. So on to my last couple of points. The first one I want to talk about is sound. Now this is a little bit of disappointment as it's not so immersive as games like Elite and Dangerous. For example, you might hear an engine noise and then it might just dissipate very quickly. It doesn't seem very immersive. Another issue with the sound particularly is that down at the bottom you usually hear other people's conversations, like people asking to be dropped cargo or wanting to be scanned, and this can be very confusing because you think they're talking to you and 99% of the time they're not. I'd like an option to at least turn that off because it is very confusing. So another thing I wanted to touch about is the big ships. Now I've only had a large ship for a very short amount of time, but in the time of actually owning one it didn't seem that exciting. In combat it would miss a lot of shots and didn't seem all that powerful neither. I definitely think this game is best in a kind of a S-class ship, or something around about the Nova or Eclipse, kind of M3 class in the previous games. If you go into the large ships they don't seem that interesting to actually fly. There is downsides also to the large ships as they can't use the highways, and that can make them a lot more slower. So to summarise, is X4 worth buying at the moment? I would probably say not necessarily at the moment regarding its price, as there still needs to be quite a lot of work done on it to make it what it could be. For example, that the UA needs a big overhaul. I don't know if that's going to get done or not, but that would make a huge difference to the game, making it a lot more easier to understand. I do find there's a bit of lack on the high-end content as well. So far I haven't really seen anything really to attack. Maybe I haven't opened certain areas or something, part of a storyline or something, but at the moment I haven't really seen anything to attack. The BBS or the missions seem to give me around about exactly the same rewards as they did right at the start of the game, and now with all these extra ships earning money they just don't even seem worthwhile. And the missions themselves, I end up usually only picking repair satellites or destroying mines. Usually a lot of the other ones aren't worth it and they're pretty much the same thing over and over. You probably find there's about 4 or 5 actual missions actually in the game, which again is a bit disappointing and something I guess they will definitely expand on. But like I said, it's got potential to be a lot more in the future. I don't think just putting more areas in the map and more ships is just going to fix the game. It needs things changed, like I said, the UI, and that will make a huge difference to the game. Egosoft do have a very good history of supporting their products well after release, so given that's the case, this could be made into something much better. It is definitely a good starting point for now, but like I said, I wouldn't think just throwing more at the game, like more areas and units, is going to make it better. On the modding side, I can't see things being that particularly easy, as it's pretty much the same engine as Rebirth, and my kind of takeaway from Rebirth that it was kind of very difficult to mod because it was very confusing and used specialised modding tools and programs to do it. So I can't see that being changed much here. Anyway guys, hopefully you understand that this video took a lot bit longer to produce. Like I said, I wanted to try and explore as much of the game as I could. I didn't think I could do that based on a couple of hours actual gameplay. So hopefully you understand. And even given the time that I spent, I still didn't get to station building. That's definitely something I would like to pick up in the future and see how this one develops. Anyway guys, as always, if you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them below. They're always greatly welcome, and I'll be very interested to see what you think of all this. If you did like the video, please drop us a like, that would be brilliant. And if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel. Anyway guys, I think that's it for this one. Sorry this has been a bit longer and a bit later than it should, but just that's the case. Anyway guys, take care and have fun out there.
Hello there.